Okay, top of the morning to you. So, how much do you know about COVID-19 and the new vaccines that are coming out? Well, whatever you know or don't know, I have an expert who is going to give us some information about COVID-19 and the vaccines in Champaign County. His name is Dr. David Fletcher. So stay tuned. So, top of the morning to you. This is Rose Price at Landmark Real Estate, and today I thought it would be a great opportunity to interview Dr. David Fletcher, owner of SafeWorks. Dr. Fletcher is pretty well known in our community as being an educational guy on the COVID, and he seems to know an awful lot about since he's interviewed so often. So, Dr. Fletcher, welcome, and I'll try to give you a few questions and add to it if you like, okay?
Well, thanks for having me on, Rose.
Okay, no problem. So, Dr. Fletcher, what is the biggest news about the vaccine that excites you right now?
Well, the biggest news, and we're taping this on Thursday, December 17th, is just minutes ago that the second vaccine, the Moderna vaccine, was approved by the FDA. And so that's exciting that we have a second vaccine that'll be out in the marketplace, and it means that a lot more vaccine will be available for people. It's a little different than the Pfizer vaccine in that logistically it's easier to distribute, especially to satellite regions, because it doesn't require the refrigeration like the Pfizer vaccine. You can just store the vaccine in a regular freezer as opposed to a deep freezer that the Pfizer vaccine requires 80 degrees minus Fahrenheit.
Okay, very good. And so, Dr. Fletcher, when did the vaccine actually arrive here in Champaign County?
It arrived on Tuesday.
Okay.
December the 15th.
And do you know what amount of vaccine that we received?
I don't know the exact numbers. I've heard various different things, like almost like 2,500 doses. I'm not for certain. I do know that Carl is the facility that gets the vaccine from the Illinois stockpile. There are several regions in the state. There's always a special hub hospital in East Central Illinois. It's Carl. In Springfield, it's St. John's. And so they distributed it to the hospitals, not only just Carl, but OSF and other hospitals in the region.
I see. And who exactly is going to decide how this is going to be distributed amongst our people here in the county?
Well, eventually everybody's going to get it, but right now we're trying to prioritize the highest risk individuals. And based on recommendations by the Immunization Practices Committee from the Centers for Disease Control, they've basically put 4 different categories as far as risk. And right now, the people who are 1A, these are healthcare workers, nursing home employees, and nursing home residents who are considered 1A, and they're the top priority. Well, 1B is going to be essential workers such as police and fire, and people in other essential industries such as meatpacking and other manufacturing companies. And it'll go down the list. The second tier is going to be people over 65, especially those with a lot of pre-existing medical conditions. Tier 4 is basically steerage category, and that's about anyone else that's left. And one thing about the vaccine, we need to remind ourselves, it's only indicated for individuals who are 16 and older.
Okay. All right. I was thinking it was 18, but 16 or older. Okay, very good. And what's the difference between having to take 1 shot or 2 shots, and who's offering which? And what's the difference?
Well, the difference is right now the 2 vaccines that have been approved, the Pfizer vaccine and the Moderna vaccine, are 2-shot vaccines, in that the second injection 21 to 28 days apart is required to boost the immunity to be protective. If you just do 1 shot, you're not going to have any longevity as far as the antibodies that develop from the exposure and the stimulation of your immune system, which we call T cells. And so it's important to have that second shot. Now, there are a couple other vaccines that are in going through clinical phase 3 trials, such as Johnson & Johnson, which is only a one shot. So there's a little bit difference as far as some of the technology, how the vaccines were developed. The ones that are approved right now are what are called messenger RNA vaccines. They don't have any kind of like egg products that some people didn't like to get, like with the flu shot and some other vaccines. So that's what you're seeing right now with the vaccines.
I see. And so why do the vaccines have to be refrigerated?
Basically for stability, so they don't deteriorate. That's why they have to be that way. It's part of the messenger RNA technology that they have to have the refrigeration.
What would happen if there was a mix-up and it didn't get refrigerated and someone took the shot?
Well, it wouldn't work.
Okay, but it wouldn't hurt them.
It wouldn't hurt, but the issue is that one of the logistical challenges of the vaccine program is just that whole aspect of the proper storage.
I see. And have there been any major side effects with taking these shots that you're aware of?
Well, that's a very good question. During the phase 3 trials, both vaccines were very well tolerated. So far, since the vaccine's been available and used, there was a healthcare worker in Alaska yesterday who reported a severe reaction, a rash reaction, was kept in the hospital overnight for observation. Nothing serious, but that was one thing. And then last week, when England started out vaccinating people, a couple of healthcare workers had some allergic reactions. They had a prior history of some allergic reactions, and they had carried what we call EpiPens or epinephrine pens. And so they had a tendency to have some kind of reaction. Nothing too serious, but so far it's been very well tolerated. So I know several individuals who've been vaccinated here in central Illinois, and those are individuals that are at Sarah Bush or Gibson City or in Decatur, because the facilities outside of Champaign County were the highest priority list. The state basically looked at the 50 counties in Illinois with the highest death rates. And unfortunately, Champaign was on the lower side, and that's why we did not get the initial shipment like the other surrounding communities did.
Okay, I understand. So, what happens if you've already had COVID? Can you still take this shot? What does it do?
Well, that's a great question, Rose. And so it is recommended that someone who's had prior COVID infection has to wait around 3 months before they can get vaccinated. And the belief is by having the vaccination will further stimulate the immune system to further boost their immunity. Right now, it's believed most people, once they get COVID-19, are not going to get reinfected. There's a couple cases out there of people who've had it the second time. And so it's not a guarantee, but generally if you've had COVID, it's sort of a get out of jail free card for the next at least 3 months. And so that's the recommendation. So, I will state on a personal level, I understand the issue very well because unfortunately I did have a COVID infection and fortunately recovered. So I cannot get a vaccine for at least 3 months.
I see. And so, Dr. Fletcher, how long do you think it'll take to get all of our citizens here in Champaign County vaccinated if they decide they want to vaccinate?
Well, it depends on the approval for the other vaccines from different manufacturers. The U.S. government had invested in 5 different other vaccine manufacturers with Operation Warp Speed, where they gave them R&D money for research to help advance and fast-track the programs. Pfizer did not get any research money, but they did have prepaid orders from the United States government and other countries. So we need to get some other vendors out there to really have adequate supply. If we just have Pfizer and Moderna as far as vaccines, it's going to be a while, and they're just ramping up production. Right now, it's estimated in the United States that 26 million Americans qualify in the 1A category: healthcare workers, nursing home residents, or nursing employees. I think that if everything goes well, I believe, what I've been trying to tell people, I believe April and May is a realistic goal for most of the population to be vaccinated.
And if that were the case, do you then see that we could loosen up and maybe get our restaurants open and help our small businesses here in town?
Well, I don't think we have to wait that long to open up the restaurants and small businesses. I believe, once the positivity rate gets down below 8% and hospitalization is going to go down, I believe that restaurants can reopen. Right now we just had the second huge wave that mandated the fact that in restaurants people take their mask off. That's what's different from going and eating in a restaurant as opposed to like going to a Walmart or a store. But I'm optimistic that I would say, based on the trends I'm seeing, that by February 2021 you'll see some going back to what we call Tier 4 mitigation strategies. As far as Tier 5, which is when we have the vaccines in place, again, I'm optimistic for April or May of 2021.
Okay, good. And is there anybody that should not get this vaccine?
Yes, not pregnant women, people who are under 16 years old. It's not been tested on children yet. People who've had very severe allergies that have had adverse reactions to other vaccines should not get it.
Okay. And is there a cost to receiving this vaccine?
There is not a cost.
Okay.
Yeah, the providers will try to bill insurance if they can, but it is provided by the U.S. government for free as part of what we as taxpayers pay to help develop it. There is already some belief there's black marketing of the vaccine. That's one of the other aspects of the program, is security of the vaccine, where it's transported and stored. I believe that within a couple months you're going to start seeing Walgreens and CVS, who have contracts with the U.S. government, will be operating it at their facilities.
Okay, that would be fantastic if that happened. So let's move to rapid testing. Do we have any rapid testing sites here in Champaign?
We do. There's a couple different clinics that you can request the rapid testing. The one that we've utilized the most has been at Gibson City. They use the rapid antigen test. The problem with the rapid antigen test is there's a lot of false negatives with it, but it does provide really quick testing. Obviously, the other rapid testing is what the University of Illinois has developed with the saliva testing they have. With that technology is very quick in processing, and it provided a good way to keep a handle on the students here.
Okay. And I heard today, correct me if I heard wrong, that there is coming out home test for COVID. Is that true?
You heard it correctly. It's on there on the market. One's been approved by the FDA, and basically you get the results pretty quickly. So, you have to always temper the results with the clinical picture. If you have a person that's still sick, or loss of taste or temperature, or they've had some pretty good exposure, I always recommend getting some additional testing. I know in my situation, I originally had a rapid test. I did up at Gibson City that was positive, but a few days later I had the PCR test, which is takes more time, and that confirmed the diagnosis.
Very good. Okay. I know if people are traveling, it seems like there's a little worry of people traveling in airplanes and that right now. And should folks that want to travel, should they be going to get tested before they get on a plane?
Well, that would be a good idea, because you want to, if they're infected, they don't want to go on a plane and infect wherever they're going to go to.
If you have no symptoms, though, should you?
Well, the problem is that there are so many people out there asymptomatic. I'll give the story of my wife Casey's grandfather, who was 89 years old, who completely asymptomatic. He drove himself to the Carl testing site after his wife, Lois, was hospitalized at Carl. She had viral pneumonia from COVID and was on oxygen, and she got dexamethasone, and she got remdesivir antivirals. She was also part of the monoclonal antibody studies. She was in the hospital 8 days. He's completely asymptomatic. He has significant medical conditions, but you couldn't tell he was sick. I mean, and that's the weird thing about this illness, and it's just so variable. In my own experience, my symptoms were relatively mild. Obviously worry about getting worse. Especially, I had knowledge of a couple of my friends who died that didn't really have any health problems, or I had some attorney friends of mine that were hospitalized. So, it's a lot of fear of the unknown. But the good message to your viewers and your YouTube channel, Rose, is that getting COVID in late December of 2020 is certainly better than getting it back in March and April when we didn't know how to treat it. We've got a lot of ways to treat it. We now have the monoclonal antibodies, both Regeneron and the BAM product, which was put on by Lilly, are approved and available. As an IV infusion for an hour. If you first get a diagnosis, it keeps people out of the hospital. That's the Regeneron is the drug that President Trump got. So there's certainly a lot more ways to deal with it. But still, it's obviously devastating. But there's good care in Champaign County.
Very good. So, Dr. Fletcher, I'm not an expert in any of this, and you know so much more. Is there any questions I should have asked that I didn't, that you might want to share with my audience, and give us any last comments that you might have?
Well, I think I would probably state is that the vaccine is coming out to the general population. We're all eager to get over this pandemic and all the associated handcuffing of society in our lives, but we got to be patient. We got a little bit more, some difficult times ahead, so we have to still be careful doing our physical distancing, wearing a mask, washing your hands. If you're sick, go get tested. Don't come to work. So that's sort of the message I would say out there, and also, because you are afraid maybe to go to a hospital, please don't delay any treatment for any other medical problems. That's the biggest thing we saw, was a lot of people didn't get regular care or couldn't get care because of the pandemic, and so they didn't get colonoscopies, they didn't get their heart checked out. So hospitals are still doing elective procedures. That was the horrible time back in April when you couldn't see a doctor, it was telehealth, you couldn't have an operation, and we're not in that situation right now. So please don't ignore other potential health problems besides COVID.
Okay, very good. Well, Dr. Fletcher, I appreciate your time today. You've always been a star to educate everyone, and I'm just thankful that you are here to talk about COVID for my audience, and thank you for doing everything you can to keep us safe in this community.
Well, thank you for having me on. It's an honor. Thank you, Rose.
So there you have it. There's some information, and some quality information from Dr. David Fletcher from SafeWorks here in Champaign, Illinois. And I hope he answered a lot of your questions and concerns about the vaccine and about COVID in general. So stay tuned each week. Every week I have videos that occur on Mondays. And if you like my channel, please subscribe so that you'll be alerted to those videos. If you have further questions about COVID-19, just put your questions down below. I'll get them to Dr. Fletcher, and I'll get him to answer them. So until then, have a powerful day.